Why do I feel like I'm in the confessional of a reality TV show? Maybe it's because I just started rewatching Housewives of Beverly Hills, and I'm like, this is the most dramatic season yet. Hi friends, welcome to a recent reads wrap-up. I initially wanted to do an April wrap-up, but then when I went through the list of books I read last month, I realized that most of these books are already in like daily vlogs, weekly vlogs, or they are in vlogs that are yet to come out. So I opted instead for choosing the 5 books that I have read recently that I have not talked about in videos, because I have talked about it in like Patreon live shows and stuff when we do reading sprints, but not necessarily main channel videos. So I have got a nice little stack of books under my armpit. Gorgeous place to be in if you ask me. And then I have another one that I also read last month. It's already been on hold though. I really didn't like it. So cheers to a wrap up. Cheers to a hopefully good reading month for May. And let a girl know down in the comments, what did you read in April? What have you read recently? What did you rate it? Any new favorites? Maybe things you didn't necessarily like. Let a girl know all of that down in the comments, and let's get right into the most dramatic season yet. And let me tell you, I feel like I say this in every single wrap up. We started out the month strong, because I read Front Desk by Kelly Yang, which I ended up rating 5 stars. Not only that though, but it was one of my 23 books to read in 2023, so 1 off the list. We're doing pretty good. Actually, let me not say that, because I have not looked at that list in a few months, and I actually don't know how good we're doing, so let me not claim anything. However, I cried for the entirety of the book, save the first 20 pages, so the entire book, and I read it mostly in one sitting. And this is when I say that middle grade can contain so much nuance in these stories, yet verbalize things in a way that is very accessible, very mundane, very everyday, very conversational. And I love the way that Kelly Yang was able to navigate all of the nuances to immigration and being a part of a minority group in the US. And this book, I didn't know up until I reached the end of it, is modeled after her own experience as a Chinese immigrant. And so in this one, we follow Mia and her parents, also Chinese immigrants, getting to the US, and they're trying to find jobs, they're trying to find work in order to sustain their lives and provide for their kid. And they stumble across this motel that is hiring. They are hired to manage the motel, and in their journey of doing so, they start helping both people who are staying in the motel and immigrants and people from minority groups that are seeking shelter. And the catch of the book is that the owner of the motel, obviously, and the authorities as well, nobody can find out that they're doing this because they'll be risking literally everything. This was so incredibly heartfelt while at the same time being so hard-hitting. And I've heard that the second book only gets more emotional. I don't know exactly what will make that more emotional than this. I think Kelly Yang is very gifted at bringing a variety of different cultures into a single book and merging that into this universal experience that is either being an immigrant or being a person of color. And the found family aspect, as always in middle grade books, I think it's more often to see it than not, is always a joy to see. And in this one in particular, we not only get to see Mia obviously befriend somebody her age, but we also see her be very, very friendly and create this family aspect with the people that stay in the motel and that are the regulars. It also, I think, gives you a whole new perspective, I think, on the parent side of it, with the sacrifices that come with doing something like this, and all of the frustrations and all of the tears and all of the anger and hope and happiness that can come from making a life-changing decision like this for the good of your kids, or in the hopes that it'll be good for your kids. And so I loved every single second of this. It's I think hard to encapsulate everything without saying read it, though I will say read it. When you get to the jeans scene, you know, like if you've been there, you know, if you know, you know. Oh my god, this book is just so good. The next book also became a quick favorite, although I should stop saying that, because every book I'm gonna talk about under my armpit, save for the one I've already on hold, are new favorites. But this is one of those books that I was like super intimidated by for no reason at all. I'd heard everybody say amazing things about this one, that the audiobook was great, the experience is great, it's Black love excellence. Like, I needed to read it because I would love it, and just all of these amazing things about this book. And I kept telling myself, not in the mood for romance right now, but I just have to wait for the right moment, because for me, romance is one of those genres I have to read when I'm in the right mood for it. I'm a mood reader in general, but for romance in particular, romance and thrillers are two genres that I have to be like very specifically in the mood for. before. Picked it up and I loved it every bit as people told me I would, and it is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Now in this one we follow Ava and Shane, who are both writers. Ava is an erotica writer. She's been writing this series that she has sort of fallen out of love with. She feels like she has outgrown this series because of how long she's been writing it for. And then Shane is not only a writer, he is also a teacher, but he is an award-winning author, all of these different accolades. It's very much literary fiction, and they end up meeting up at a Black literature event, except that what people don't know, just based on the tension they're able to see, is that many years in the past, these two had a wild week where they just spent every second, every minute together, and they essentially very quickly kind of fell in love and changed each other's lives, and they had never seen each other again since then, but they'd been writing secretly to each other through their books. And just that alone, they're writing to each other, characters are modeled after each other, just that vibe of wherever you are, I'm hoping you see this and read this and know that I have got you in my head and in my heart. Like, stop it right fucking now. It was so good just based on that alone. And then when you add to it the dynamic that they're not, you know, they're not teenagers. These are people who are adults, people who have got their lives kind of put together, and obviously they're still trying to figure out things. And these are people who have very clearly not gotten over each other. And so seeing them reconnect and try and work out the dynamics of their relationship while dealing with all of their own mental health, mental illness struggles, and trying to sort of fit each other into their lives in the midst of healing was so fucking beautiful to see. And I love that, I mean, in my eyes, it felt very realistic with, it's not easy sometimes to fit love in all of that, you know, when you're trying to figure out your life and the dynamics of everything, and you have kids and, you know, you have work to do. It's very hard to find out what place love has, again, in your everyday life. Ava's daughter in this absolutely stole the show whenever she was on any scene. It was a joy to behold, and their friends and loved ones, and again, people that they care about, everybody was a joy to read about, whether they were, you know, likable or not. I think everybody just added so much greatness into the story. God, I see what you do for others. I see it. I see it. When will it be my turn? We're stepping into did not like unhauled territory. Thankfully, it's only one book, so in the grand scheme of things, we had a good month, but this was a 2-star for me. And listen, I had very specific reasons. Again, when I'm reading romance, I know when I'm in the mood for it. I know what I am in the mood for, because typically something triggers it, you know, in like a good way. I had just watched the new Chris Evans Ana de Armas movie, and I was like, oh my God, yes, like a spy little bodyguard romance. Oh my God, very into it. Definitely want to read some. If you have any recs for that, spy, bodyguard, CIA, secret, undercover, something, I don't fucking know. Anything along those lines, do let a girl know, because I am in desperate need of something amongst those lines, and I cannot find anything for the life of me. And so I picked up The Royals Next Door. So in this one, we follow Piper, who is a teacher, and she lives with her mom. They share a house. This house is, I guess, like a guest house, you know, like those houses that have like the smaller houses behind it. And so the Royals eye that house, they move into that house, and she ends up meeting the Royals and the bodyguard, forming a relationship with each of these members, you know, in their own right individually, and then develops a little romance with said bodyguard named Harrison. The romance to me was like, okay, like the banter was kind of cute, and then the interactions were kind of cute, but that's kind of all that it was. Beside that, you could tell very much that the Royals were modeled after Prince Harry and Meghan, which would have typically been a win for me. However, the author really tried to drop in these sections of commentary on Meghan not feeling adequate to the job of a royal, and all of the pressure that comes with the media and all of the pressure that comes with being a part of this family. But it wasn't really anything substantial, and you could tell that because they were modeled after these two very real people and all of those occurrences are real, I feel like the author felt the need to include that in the book as well. But it really was a go on girl, give us nothing. It didn't quite fit into to the grand scheme of the story. There was also a lot of other commentary, like side commentary, that became a huge plot point for about 3 pages and then just dissipated about being a romance reader. And while yes, it is a big conversation to be had about how a lot of people read romance and they consume a lot of it and they're put down because they're not real readers or it's not substantial reading, whatever the fuck that means. We've talked about how reading is very subjective in this channel and in the podcast. It's something that gets me very heated. The author felt the need to throw that in there because Piper really likes romance books, which is something that is thrown in here and there throughout the story, but not really anything that has any real impact onto the story, because she does have like a romance book podcast that is completely irrelevant up until the author decides to make this grand speech about how women are put down for reading romance. I don't know, it just felt like this weird self-insert of, let me just throw this in here because the people will like it. Like, no, I really did like it. And so it just overall, structurally, the book felt very weird and it really did feel like nothing ever happened. Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I am down the Garber rabbit hole. I've read the 2 books and the Once Upon a Broken Heart. Is that what the series is called? That sounds like a long title for a series. Now I'm into Caraval. I'm waiting for my copy of Legendary to get here, and then I'll probably just read Finale straight after that. So that means I will literally have finished both of Stephanie Garber's series by the end of the year. I never thought, just based on what people have told me, because everybody's like, oh my god, Mel, you need to read Caraval. Oh my god, Mel, you need to read this. And I feel like there's a section of people who have been saying that, and then there's a section of people who have been like, Mel, you're really not gonna like it. Please don't pick it up. There was a period of time where YA and like the tropage of YA was not really something I was enjoying, because it was starting to feel very monotonous to me. And so I need to be in the right headspace to pick up Caraval. And I did. And I rated it 4 stars, surprisingly, or not, I don't know. In this one, we follow a set of sisters, Scarlett and Donatella. Scarlett, for years now, had been reaching out to Caraval, which is a magical island circus game situation. She's been reaching to the game master Legend in order to attend with her sister Donatella. Attend? This is so chaotic, I'm so sorry. This is the ADHDing. Basically, Miss Scarlett now has to figure out this whole game situation and win it in order to get her sister back. And in the midst of that, she ends up meeting Julian, who is the love interest. Goes from there. I really enjoyed this, and I think what Stephanie Garber excels at is her atmosphere. She knows what world she is building. She knows how to construct it for you in a way where it's tangible. You feel like you could touch things if you wanted to. You feel like you could smell things if you wanted to. You feel like you could see things if you wanted to. And how the characters go along with that. I also think that in this one, more than her other series, the plot is very engaging because we have the whole game situation and the character gets clues as she goes, and it's this whole puzzle she has to kind of figure out. It's very immersive. It almost feels like very interactive because you yourself, or at least I was very much trying to figure out what was going on, how she was going to find her sister, how she was going to win, what all of these different riddles meant. And I think in that regard, it was very engaging. And Scarlett too, I actually really enjoyed her character. She, in comparison to Evangeline, is not so naive, which I do think is just a byproduct of how these 2 characters were raised, because their parents are very different. And so Scarlett, she's very sharp, she is very quick, she's very quick-witted, and she is very protective of her sister, which is a dynamic I very much liked to see. Julian was cute. I actually really enjoyed Julian. Their banter was fantastic. The flirting was really good as well. It really, I think, sold it for me. Like, it made it believable that these 2 people had that tension, that they would have at some point, you know, been together or liked each other. She really sold that for me. And the mystery behind Caraval was also fantastic. I think she's really good at dropping hints throughout the book so that when you get to the end and you get through all of these twists, you kind of go, oh shit, it was always there. And I love those. I also love her writing. Her writing is very purple prosy, very lyrical. I think less so in Caraval than in Once Upon a Broken Heart, but she knows when to give it to you. Like, it's kind of like this push and pull. Really appreciated that about this one. And then last but not least, this is a book that I picked up in 2020 when it came out. I promptly DNF'd it after reading 30% of the book, and I was very much not in the mindset for this. At the time, I was very much seeking fantasy, sci-fi, dystopia, just any sort of book that was romance heavy. That's what I wanted to read at the time, and I went into this book for some reason expecting that when I knew, or I should have known better than to expect that in a Suzanne Collins book. And now with the Eau de Renaissance of The Hunger Games, that's Caesar Flickerman's song. That's too good a song for kids that are about to slaughter each other. I did pick up The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. If you know, this is a prequel to The Hunger Games. We follow President Snow, who is not the jolliest of characters. And the pacing of this book, some people would argue, and I still would argue, not the best. However, when you look at the time frame this book takes place in, it makes sense. This takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, so it's very early on in the stages of this thing even happening. 10 years after the war. It's very gray, very mellow, very depressing. There doesn't seem to be a lot of hope in any areas, which is, it's fair, because Panem is still trying to restructure itself after this whole war went down with the rebels. And so to see the games be very underdeveloped, see the games be as unstructured as they are, makes a lot of sense. And I think it was a fantastic exemplification of how much impact Snow actually has on the games. You can quantify it when you read this book and then compare it to what we conventionally know as the Hunger Games, 74th, 75th, and every single one that came before that that Snow was involved in. You really get to see just how much the games change and evolve based on his experience in this one. And I think that's what makes everything so much more fucked up, is that the changes that were made to the games and everything in general that was added to Panem as a system, as an establishment, is because Snow himself experienced the games, experienced life at the districts, experienced so many things that your regular Capitolian would not have experience themselves, because in their privilege and their wealth and everything, they just stay in the capital. That's what makes it so insidious and so good, is that we see the journey of a person who could have had all of the impact that they would have wanted, that they could have wanted, because they had all of the tools to do so, and they had all of the experience to know what to do. And instead of doing something good, they decided to just carry on with this terrible system that benefits nobody but the people in power and the people in wealth. She also drops a lot of things very in between the lines, and so it's one of those books that you can grab a line and it has so many entendres, and it is just a joy to read. And I think all of the characters in this particular book were so good, from Snow to Sejanus to Lucy to Dr. Gall. I can't wait to see this fucking movie, because the aesthetic of the movie already looks so freaking good, and I have hope that they'll treat this with the same respect that they did the main series, save for the Mockingjays. We don't talk about that. It's funny how 3 years can make so much difference in terms of perception and enjoyment of a book, but I loved every single second of this. And that's it for today, friends. That is all that I have got for you today in this recent reads wrap up. Again, let a girl know what you've read recently down in the comments. Have you read any of the books I read this month? What did you think about them? Do let a girl know. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Give this video a massive thumbs up. You know the usual. If you reach the end of the video, let us leave a bird emoji down below for songbirds and snakes. So any bird you want, just leave it down in the comments. Also, in the description, as always, you'll be able to find my podcast, Talk and Talk. It is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All of my social medias, the link to Patreon in case you want to support the channel further. Love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.